Hello, dear friends. This year, 2026, marks the starting gun for all major events, according to Professor Damián Galerón. Opinion piece: Obsolete System, Eroded Trust, It's Time for Change, Multipolar World Order, Geopolitical Law of Jungle, Politicization of Everything. Depopulation is not the solution. Everyone considers themselves the good guys. Let's start. The traditional financial system is obsolete, according to Trader Girl IQ channel. While banks freeze your money and charge you fees, cryptocurrencies move millions in seconds for less than a penny worldwide. The financial shift is already here. Banks are in crisis because they are slow, expensive and obsolete. They are going bankrupt because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means banks can lend money they don't have. Most of the problem originates in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. When banks fail due to their own incompetence, the taxpayer pays the price. This will continue until action is taken. We have quantitative easing, which is fundamentally questionable, and the artificial printing of money, which, if done by any ordinary person, would land them in jail for a long time. Yet governments and central banks do it constantly. Reset news. The storm is brewing with the ferocity of a black swan event. The dark side is in free fall. Its web is unraveling faster than anyone predicted. 6,321 patents are blocked under national security orders. They are not weapons or bombs. They are cures. The word hunter means deception or lie in Hebrew. The Chinese are returning en masse to the countryside, fleeing surveillance in the city. Depopulation is not a reliable solution to environmental problems. Data centers don't just store your internet videos. Their goal is thought control. They serve as brainwave processing centers for surveillance and to direct energy toward the population. Their objective appears to be tough control, like neural processing centers for brainwaves. Full thought summary. Canada has formed an alliance that includes Japan, the EU, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand to protect the interests of the Western Alliance. Canada has also announced the construction of an oil pipeline to the west coast to export oil and gas to Asia. Canada is strengthening ties and conducting joint military exercises with the Nordic countries. In Germany, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and other companies are returning to the arms industry for the first time since World War II. Weapon industry, China, India, Japan, and Pakistan are ignoring calls to boycott Iranian oil. Canada's assisted suicide program could include children and people with mental illness. Crisis. Oil reserves could run out this summer. Financial conditions are about to get tougher. The WHO is stoking fears of Ebola after the hunter scare failed. Once trust in the system begins to erode, things can fall apart much faster than you'd like. Policymakers will not admit this. In a crisis, everyone sees themselves as the good guys, according to Charles Hughes Smith. The state has two monopolies. It must protect at all costs: the monopoly of determining what is legal tender and the monopoly of the use of force. We are entering in an era in which the immovable will encounter irresistible forces. Those tasked with preventing the collapse of state finances will see themselves as heroes. Politicization of everything. There was a time when politics occupied only a small space in life. A citizen could follow public affairs, debate taxes or foreign policy, and then return to their daily activities. This balance has been broken. Politics is no longer confined to government or elections. It increasingly pervades entertainment, education, business, sports, language, and private consciousness. Digital slavery is a subtle weapon of social subordination and global control. Instead of talking face to face and interacting physically, we send each other messages, videos, and silly jokes. Working from home is designed to separate us from one another, making us more easily manipulated, controllable, and expendable, susceptible to being replaced by robots and ultimately by artificial intelligence. To say that the world is experiencing turmoil unseen since the 1960s is an understatement. The war in Ukraine has been going on for 5 years. The war in Iran continues with no end in sight, and NATO may be nearing dissolution. Energy prices are skyrocketing. Inflation has accelerated. Consumer confidence has plummeted. Debt is at an all-time high, and supply chains are breaking down. According to Sam Lowry, authoritarianism doesn't usually arrive with a cup. It arrives with a login, a compliance form, a fine for keeping records in the wrong format. It comes with a discreet extension of an election mandate, a closed bank account, a prison sentence for a social media post. Each measure has a justification that seems reasonable. The problem lies in the direction it takes and how far it has gone. The stagflation narrative dominating social media isn't entirely wrong, according to Lance Roberts. Supply chains are under pressure, and the dollar faces structural difficulties. Central banks have bought gold at a historic pace, and stocks are overvalued. However, the leap from these observations to selling everything, betting everything on commodities, declaring that bonds are finished and that the Great Reset has arrived, this is where the analysis ends and the narrative begins. Economy. 27 countries seek access to World Bank funds since the conflict with Iran. SpaceX files for IPO. Walmart plunges after disappointing forecasts. Inflation is impacting the saturated AI market. The momentum bubble is starting to crack. Goldman Sachs warns of a pullback. Market leadership is narrow, increasing risk during the summer. Most Americans cannot afford a new home. Home prices registered their biggest annual increase in more than a year. The yield on 30-year Treasury bonds soars to its highest level in 19 years. Speculators are dumping Treasury bonds as yields rise. Turkey liquidated almost all of its US Treasury bonds in March. Turkish markets plunged after a court removed the opposition leader. Jobless claims refuse to show signs of an AI-induced job apocalypse. foreigners are buying far fewer US stocks. The US is still a decade away from breaking China's rare earth monopoly. The new Fed chair promises regime change to combat inflation. The International Energy Agency is wrong to predict the demise of coal. Global rush for suicide drones as Taiwan sees a surge in orders. Demographic winter forces South Korea to deploy war robots. Middle East. Xi Jinping warned the US against new attacks on Iran. The conflict with Iran is catalyzing a multipolar world order. It's not Iran that's trapping ships in the Strait of Hormuz. It's the insurance risk. Iran launches the cryptocurrency-based insurance platform Hormuz Safe for ships crossing the strait. Diplomacy will become impossible if Iran implements the Hormuz toll system, according to Marco Rubio. 3 oil tankers carrying 6 million barrels leave the Strait of Hormuz. Almost all non-Iranian tankers that entered the Persian Gulf during the war successfully exited with cargo. Dubai's status as a shipping hub is under pressure. The Senate approves a measure to withdraw US involvement in the conflict with Iran. Pakistan deploys thousands of troops and a fighter jet squadron to Saudi Arabia. Pakistan uses diplomacy to secure liquefied natural gas supplies from the Strait of Hormuz. Gulf states rejected the Emirates' call for an attack on Iran. The BRICS summit failed to reach a joint declaration on the war with Iran. Europe. Germany fears a new wave of migration after Spain took in hundreds of thousands of undocumented immigrants. Poland is the last country standing in the way of a federalized Europe. Trump backtraps and announces the deployment of 5,000 troops to Poland. Vance urges Britons to defend their culture against Starmer. The UK leads European countries in hiring people over 50. The UK Treasury is pushing for food price caps. Norway wants to lead a Viking bloc to contain Russia. Switzerland will vote on capping its population at 10 million. Turkey proposes an oil pipeline to revitalize NATO's eastern flank. Spain. The weight of Spanish industry reaches its lowest point this century. A judge freezes nearly €500,000 in former President Zapatero's account. Young people have to go into debt to move out. 98% of their salary goes to rent. Spanish olive oil launches a major campaign in China. Americas. The likelihood of a US invasion of Cuba increases. The US deploys an aircraft carrier to the Caribbean as the White House pressures Cuba. The US has indicted Raúl Castro for the murder of Americans. The oil ship in Trinidad and Tobago threatens Venezuela fishing. Chaos erupts in Bolivia as socialists unleash general strikes and riots. Bolivia expelled the Colombian ambassador following comments by Gustavo Petro. Peru announces the results of its presidential election after more than a month of uncertainty. Keiko Fujimori and Roberto Sanchez advanced to the second round. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.